Good evening and welcome to our White Collar Support Group Tuesday night speaker series. Tonight we have special speakers. We have prison consultant Sam Mangel and Craig Rothfeld, very good friends of mine. And we're excited that they're going to be speaking tonight. More about that in a minute. First of all, this event is being brought to you by the White Collar Support Group. We are the first and only support group that helps people who have been prosecuted for white-collar crimes and their families. We meet on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We've been doing that for over 10 years. And this year we celebrated our 500th meeting. Actually, this coming Monday will be our 510th meeting. So we've been doing it for a long time, and we've helped a lot of people, and we're really fortunate to have done that and to be helped by them. So if you know anybody who has a white collar issue, whether it be a client, a friend, a family member, please refer them to our website. That's prisonist.org. That's prisonist like feminist.org. And they can fill out a request there, and we'll get back to them and we'll give them information about meetings. Upcoming Tuesday night speakers, I'm going to announce a couple of them. The first I'm going to announce is in May, on May 9th. Our speaker is going to be Tom Harden. Tom, as you might know, has recently written a book called Wired on Wall Street, and he was Tipper X in Operation Perfect Hedge when the SDNY was going after insider trading. I guess they still are a little, but at that point, they were doing it a lot. And Tom was right in the middle of it all. So his new book has come out, and he's on his book tour, and he's going to be gracing us with his story on May 9th. And then on June 2nd, PG Sittenfeld is going to be our guest speaker. And PG was a member of the Cincinnati City Council, and he's on his speaking tour as well. And both PG and Tom are both members of our support group. And so we're excited to have both of them. And we're also announcing that our White Collar Conference is coming up on October 10th. So that's 10/10. That's not a hard one to remember. And we're in the early stages of planning. But if you want information about that, our website is whitecollarconference.com. That's not a hard one to remember, whitecollarconference.com. And you'll find out all about our upcoming conference. And then there's all of our videos from our two previous white collar conferences in 2024 and 2025. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm not going to do too much introducing of Sam and Craig individually, but I'm going to tell you that prison consulting and prison consultants, have come a long way in the last few years. There was a time when it was not professionalized, and people coming home from prison kind of hung out their shingle, and I don't know if they had the experience to really be of value to people. But that's changed in the last few years, and certainly there are now prison consultants that I would trust my life and my family and my case with, and two of them are speakers here tonight. We went out to breakfast a couple of months ago, and in Boca Raton, actually. We went out for bagels, and we sat there, and Craig and Sam were talking shop, and I was shocked at how much I didn't know about not only the things that they talked about, but the amount of information and assistance they're able to give people who are being prosecuted for white collar crimes. And so right there, while we're sitting at breakfast, I just knew that we had to invite them. So there are a few prison consultants out there who we are close with, and we're not ignoring you. We're just starting this. We're just starting this tonight with Craig and with Sam, And we're going to hope that everything goes smoothly tonight. It's going to be facilitated. So they're going to speak for a while, half hour, maybe more. And then afterwards, we'll have Q&A. We'll have Q&A. And if you would like to ask questions of Sam and Craig after their presentations, please put your name in chat and I will call on you. So that's it. So Sam, Craig, please take it away.
I'll start by first of all thanking Craig. 2 days after I got out of prison in 2020, a good friend of mine who was an attorney in Washington sent me an article about this prison consultant and represented I think Harvey Weinstein, and he said, "Give this guy a call." And out of the blue, I called Craig, and he was the most cordial person I could have spoken with. And while he couldn't necessarily point me in the right direction, he really took the time to sit with me and talk to me. And I am sure that he gets calls certainly monthly from people getting out of prison, looking for a job and looking for direction. And yet he took the time out of the blue to talk to a complete stranger, a no one, at 8 o'clock one night, and kind of walk me through it and give me the pros and cons of this space. So again, I just want to take the time up front to thank who I consider in many ways to be my mentor, Craig.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Jeff, thanks for having us. And that was a really nice breakfast we have. I guess if we continue the daisy chains of thank yous. I mean, yeah, listen, for everyone here, Sam and I are good friends. We've developed a really nice friendship. We've developed a nice professional friendship, a personal friendship. We both are passionate about what we do. We both love what we do. We don't like the word competitors. We think it's nonsense. There's sadly, plenty of people going to prison, although neither one of us wish for it and wish we didn't have practices. I think the person we probably both owe a hell of a lot to is Joel Sickler, who's on this video, who really paved the way for all of us. And for anyone who calls me, no is like family to me. And so you've got, I guess, two generations of mentors here on this call. And Jeff, we were just spitballing with each other at the table. We were talking about a whole lot of things when we had breakfast, and Jeff graciously asked us if we come on and just talk about things. And for people who might be interested in hearing what's going on, this is not a sales Zoom. There's none of that going on. We're here to talk about the things that we see, the horrors we see, the different ways we go about it. Um, I really have a much bigger specialty in state than federal, even though I do federal work. Sam, as you all know, spends time in the federal world, and we're happy to be here. We're happy to talk. We're happy to share how we collaborate, and most importantly, how we help people. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're helping people. We're helping their families at the lowest point in their lives, at the worst possible time. And I'm grateful to be here, and I'm certainly grateful to Jeff and to Sam and several. I know a bunch of friendly faces on this Zoom tonight. So Rob Simmels and Brent, thank you. And I can't. There's Brad Rouse and my colleague who works with me, who's a former client, Al Dersberger's on the call. So thank you to everyone. And Jeff, how do you want us to take it from here? You want Sam and I to just talk a little bit? I
Yep.
think Sam and I, yeah. I mean, Sam, why don't you? Sam and I talked about some of the things that we, kind of some high points that we wanted to hit, and I think we both agreed that the best place for he and I to start is maybe in a place that would surprise people, which is that we view this as a collaborative experience. I tell my clients, I tell anyone that I talk to that if I don't know the answer to a question, I'm going to say I don't know. And it's an answer that's not often used enough. Someone who I have a lot of respect for said that to me years and years ago. And I think people are afraid to say they don't know or embarrassed or whatever it is. And I'm like totally fine saying I don't know. And if I don't know, I go and try to find out. and I think one of the things that led us to having this conversation, and Sam, you can take it from here, is that we are collaborative with each other, and it's no different even than I am with Joel. If I don't know something, I think the right thing to do is just go ask somebody who knows more than you. And if there's someone who knows more than you and can help you more than, say, I can or something, the right thing to do is to bring that person into the fold, because ultimately the people that we're serving need help no matter who it's from. And so I figured I'll tee that up and let Sam go, and then I'll jump on from there.
I think there's a common misconception about what consultants do. And I think a lot of it stems from relationships that they might have had with other people, either in this field or with their attorneys. And I always like to start a conversation with anyone that I speak to that 75% of what I do is therapy. 75% of what I do is being there for my client and their family when they need someone to talk to most, when they can't get their attorney on the phone, when they simply don't know an answer to something and they start Googling it. And it scares the hell out of them what they're finding on Google. And just being able to say, look, we're available, call us. We might not have all the answers, but we'll certainly find a way or do our best to find an answer for you. But picking up the phone and trying to walk them off the cliff. Because when I went through it, I remember, first of all, I didn't even know people like us existed. And I remember staying up all night and wondering what the answer to something was. And my wife, who would sit there and be Googling things, no answer that she ever found was the true answer to her question. So I really believe that 75% of what a good consultant does in any field, but certainly in ours, is the ability to be responsive and available to our clients. And in many instances, that's 7 days a week, almost to the point where we're on call. And the ability to say, this is not about an ego. This is not about me trying to impress you that I spent almost 2 years in prison and I was at a detention center and I took the bus ride. It's about me saying, I don't know all the answers, but there are certain people that if we feel comfortable enough reaching out to, they might know part of the answer. And if we can start piecing it all together, then we can, in many instances, give a client and their family a answer that, again, calms them down. So collaboration in any field, I think, is the key to success. I probably talk to Craig at least twice a week. I talk to people like Maureen Baird, who is a former warden, at least twice a month, because I think having them as part of the solution and answer is vital to helping our clients. And we do it all. We don't charge anyone for it. That's just the right thing to do. And when you start doing the right thing for your client, and it doesn't become all about money, but it becomes about the knowledge that we have that, yes, we help someone, and we're not trying to ring the bell every time they pick up the phone and call us. I believe it really fills a niche. And personally speaking, I feel really good about it. And I think that's the key to a successful relationship and relationships with other people in this community.
Yeah, well said. Um, I think that sometimes, there's a lot, listen, for a lot of people on the call, I think there's part of this community here tonight has been to prison. So there's nothing really much we're going to tell you that you may not already know. There are people here who are on their way in, and there are people who've never gone and, God willing, never will go. And I think that there's so much that individuals and their families experience, that even though there can be commonality in people's problems, two people don't get their medication in two different facilities. Okay, each one didn't get their medication. But, what was that medication? What are the risks of them not getting that medication? I mean, I'm just using that as an example and each facility, as everybody knows, is different. Each federal facility is different. each state is different, and I play in the state field. Each state facility within a state is different. And so when I'm presented an issue or I'm presented something that is very, very serious, and someone may have dealt with it before. Somebody may just know a facility better or the people of the facility better, and that could potentially help my client and my family. I'm just going to reach out and ask for help. And I think dovetailing off of that, when someone asked me about 2 years ago to describe my business, right? The old elevator pitch, right? Can you say what you do in 5 words or less? And at the time, I didn't have the answer. So I spent some time thinking about it and I came up with an answer. And like I called my lawyer and I'm like, can I trademark this? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. But but I have an answer. And the answer is mitigate, advocate, and solve problems. Those are the 5 words: mitigate, advocate, and solve problems. And that's what we're doing all day long. And I think that that's something that I never lose sight of, because each one of those is very serious and very weighty. Um, and, you know, I'm not a lawyer. Sam's not a lawyer. But I feel I have a fiduciary responsibility to my clients and their families. We have signed agreements with them. We have signed authorizations with them. And in order to, effectively do that, you have to avail yourself, I believe, and I know Sam does, of all the information that is out there. And the other thing that I'll say, and I would say this to anyone on this Zoom, anyone who meets somebody else, the degrees of separation for families facing incarceration or will in the future. I will say, um, ultimately, there are certain things that I always say, and these are two of them I'll always say. One is, if I can't help you, I will tell you, okay? Because I don't need a client to pay me that I can't help to then go badmouth me or sue me, right? So, which thank God has never happened. And I will also say, if you don't hire me, it's really important you hire somebody else. And because ultimately it's about them. And if there's someone who could do something better than me, I want that other person to do it. And Joel's on the call and Sam's on the call. I mean, the reality is that it should never be lost in what we do. And if you're ever, advising people or their families or friends or counsel, it's not about the person or one person. It's about getting a person who's qualified to do it. And I think that that's just really important, and it's something that I'm happy to say and do. And I know that families, respect that, and I know they appreciate it, and I know that they also appreciate being told not to spend their money, and that, yeah, we'd love to help, but you know what? There's just no point. You're wasting your money. And the example of that, which I think is worth sharing, and I'll let Sam share an example. I remember when COVID happened, um, it was back, we all remember when COVID happened. I had been brought a lot of state cases for compassionate release and medical parole, and federal people were obviously doing their thing. And how the procedures are very different in each one. And I wound up doing 4 of them. And in all 4 cases, I said to the families, I said, listen, I really need you to hear me clearly. You're better off taking your money down to Atlantic City and just putting it on black or red. I'm like, I need you to understand you're giving me your money and there's like a 1,000,000 to 1 shot here. Like, you're on the 2 yard line with 2 seconds left and you need to go 98 yards for a touchdown. And I think it's just really important to do that it's not about just letting someone hire you. It's about being honest about whether you can help them or not, because there are some circumstances or situations that are brought up that there's really nothing you can do about. There's really not. And I think it's just disingenuous to suggest otherwise. So I don't know, Sam, we talked about how important it is to have someone and it be the right person.
one of the things that I found over the past probably 2.5 to 3 years is it's much harder to be hired and accept a case than it is to do it pro bono. Because I find that when we accept a case, and I have a couple folks that I work with day in and day out on this call, when we accept a case, that client expects us to be all in for them. And when we can't commit, or it's not something that we're comfortable with, or we know that they're taking their last dollar to try to find a way to pay us, and it simply isn't fair when they expect the exact same treatment that somebody who might pay us a significant multiple of that is, it isn't fair to them. So I just find that it's easier to say to somebody, listen, and there are people on this call that we've done this with, let me help you. Let's sit down, let's talk, let's have dinner. I'm not going to charge you because A, it's the right thing to do, and it wouldn't be fair to have them use what precious resources people have left. Because when you're going through this, between your attorney and forfeiture and seizure, it is an unbelievably expensive process. And all of a sudden, when you have to figure out, do you want to bring in another party, a consultant? Now you have to really start figuring out, what dollars do I have, and is there any fungibility in those dollars? So I would say probably 15% of the time when I get a call from somebody who's willing to hire, and clearly they want to pay us, it doesn't make sense for me to take them on as a client, as opposed to simply saying, look, I'll answer your question, let me walk you through it, and let me try to help you without being retained. Because this is the worst. You're seeing people at their absolute lowest. Last night on the call, when I heard the speaker, Nevin, talk about what's going on with his family, and the additional stress that we're under when we go through this. The last thing you want is to have stress of retaining somebody else, or trying to navigate it on your own and Googling things. So if you can find the best of both worlds, I think that's very helpful. And I think, and I know Craig's approach is a little bit different than mine in terms of being retained, but once we're retained by somebody, we're all in. You have to be all in. And it's not a matter of, well, you didn't really pay us for this. This is a little bit extra. No, you're going to retain. Here's what it is. It covers everything that you're retaining us for. And you can call me 7 times a week if you want, because sometimes people just want to talk to somebody. And I think that the value that we bring to the table is unbelievable. I can point to a case where I had a client from London, and he had to be brought back to the States and was going to Brooklyn MDC. And Craig knows everything about that facility, knows the people, knows the policies. And I asked him, could he help me get him onto a good floor? And he did, but eventually there was a problem. And the client panicked and reached out to me and said, I need to move quickly. There's all kinds of issues. And I reached out to Craig late. It was, at least for me, it was late, 8 o'clock, on a weeknight. And Craig took care of it within 12 hours. So having that relationship, but also availability, and I know where Craig is now, and given what's going on with travel, his commitment to his clients is second to none. I think that's what a consultant needs to bring to the table, in any aspect of either being retained or doing it pro bono.
I think that one of the things we talked about with Jeff when we were there, and I want to circle back to it. It's part of this, but also because it's the idea of us being stewards in our relationships with, I call them the regulators, with the departments of corrections, with the Bureau of Prisons, with the staff there. I think that was when Sam and I were just talking about, some client situations we had, and how we interacted with the facilities. But I think that's important. I mean, look, I was in prison. Okay. Thank God no one ever put a hand on me. Thank God no guard ever put a hand on me. No inmate ever put a hand on me. For any of us who ever been in, we know the horrors. We know what it feels like. We know, I'll speak for myself, how scary it could be at times, and all that. And we know that there are bad people who work in the systems. It's just a fact. There's no doubt about it. But I also know that there are good people who work in the systems and are just hamstrung by how deplorably funded they are. And I have made, I believe that no matter what the situation, if you treat people kindly and you treat people the right way and you treat them with respect and professionals, you have a good shot at developing a relationship with them. And you know, that is an extremely important part of being able to advocate for your clients. Um, you know, they're overworked, they're underpaid, you know, they can't see straight. You know, you go in there guns blazing, unless it's like the most extreme thing where you think your client's on death's door, it's really not going to serve your purpose. And so, you know, I think something that's important and we brought up at that breakfast to share is developing relationships with the people in the prisons, in the Bureau of in the federal case, the regional's office and the central office, and the Department of Corrections. It's usually just a central office around the states, and it pays dividends. And I think the other thing too, which we talked about, and I don't know, maybe we'll share examples or not, but I know I see this all the time. Like, I don't bother anyone if my client didn't get a bag of Doritos, you know, a commissary, you know, or they ran out of chocolate chip cookies. Like, you have to know what to bother these people with. You have to know what to bring them to them. You need to know that people have followed the procedure, your clients have followed the procedures themselves. And I think that that is, you know, very, very important, that we really use our discretion about what to reach out to them with and the tone with which to do it, and how heavy-handed it is. And um, I think that that was just something that I wanted to convey. But for people who don't know and ask all the time, like, what are things that you can deal with? I mean, I had a client who was on his way to religious services a few weeks ago, and he was walking down the middle of the road. The officers told him to move over. He didn't. Listen, he's got some mental health issues. They pulled the van over to the side. They got out of the van. They picked him up. They threw him into the van. They took him to the infirmary. They threw his tefillin away, which people don't know that is a highly religious object. And make a long story short, there was stuff that was on video. We got involved, and he was transferred a day later, and the officer was suspended. And that's just a run-of-the-mill Thursday night. There people's CPAP machines break. I'm sure people. You have people that are in transit in holdover centers. Whether it's state or federal, that won't get medication for 8 or 9 days, and you have to figure out a way to get to the right people so that that person gets medication. This isn't just about, the stupid Kevin Hart movie that everybody talks about. Like, these are real life-threatening issues that people are dealing with, on a day in and day out basis. And then there's the extortion issues, which people are probably familiar with. I mean, Cash App is the greatest thing that ever happened to drug dealers in the prison economy. I mean, it's unbelievable. And, I can't tell you how many times I'm getting calls that, my son's going to get killed. He's being threatened. He's going to be beat up. I paid $38,000 over the last 3 months. I have all the Cash App receipts. Navigating that is very, you have to be very deft in handling that. So, I think I'm sharing all of these things because if you're going to effectively help people, it's not just about knowledge, and it's not even just about the relationships that we might have here, like Sam and I, but it's the relationships you have with the people you're working with, or you've got no chance at all in accomplishing anything. And I know that Jeff was fascinated by that when we were just talking about, 4 different examples of things that we had to deal with. And the other thing I'll say too is, and Sam and I said this to each other, and we laughed, and I don't think I'm pissing anyone off on this call as a client. I know I never have the full story, ever. Ever, 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 ever. I never have the full story. I never got the accurate story. I never have the full story. I'm not saying it's intentional. I'm not saying client's lying. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that I never have the full story. And I think being mindful of that is extremely important as well. I think admitting it is extremely important as well. I can tell you that anytime I send an email out to any facility or anyone that works in the prison system, as it's been explained to me, or so I've been told, or I'm not there, so I didn't see it. Um, because you never have the full story. And you hope that what you have enough of is accurate. And yeah, I mean, part of the art of this, the non-science, okay, someone doesn't get their medication, it's science. Okay, they don't have the medication, let's get their medication. When it's storytelling, this one did this to me, that one did this to me, this happened here. That's where the art comes in. Are they telling you the truth? Are they not telling you the truth? How realistic is it? Do things like that really happen? Could it happen at that facility? So, those are all things that we're navigating on any given day. And it's nice to have sounding boards. It's nice to have people to throw it off of. And be and make sure things are true or not true.
Well, let me give you an
Sam, I don't
example
know if I
of
helped. I don't know if
what
I
Craig
helped you
said.
there.
An example of what Craig said about knowing the right people, and respecting not only their authority but the chain of command and policies and procedures. A few weeks ago, we had a client, and I've got to have a good relationship with Josh Smith, who's the associate director of the BOP. And the unique situation is he has been through this himself. So he knows what it's like to be in prison. And I have a client in a camp in the Southeast, older gentleman, 68 years old, that needs double shoulder surgery. And his camp's in the middle of nowhere. And the warden sent him out to a surgeon, but he wasn't a qualified surgeon. And after exhausting all the remedies and being denied, this person had torn, rotator cuff and really was going to lose use of both of his arms. We respectfully went to Josh Smith and explained to him how we went through all these procedures, and that his wife was willing to pay at their own expense for all of the medical costs to have him furloughed to Emory in Atlanta at their expense, do maybe a week of physical therapy, and return back to the camp. And Josh Smith got involved. Again, he wanted to make sure that all of the appropriate remedies were filed and he wasn't just unilaterally going over the warden's head. After we confirmed it was, he stepped in and this person got their furlough. So we actually have a receptive ear within the Bureau of Prisons, which again, I have, one other term's experience, but to my knowledge, I don't know that there's been anyone at that level that has been at least receptive to hearing and listening to the plight of inmates, and in some instances, at least doing something about it. So by interceding and interjecting ourselves in situations, whether it's what happened with the tefillin or a medical issue, there are ways to help clients that are somewhat out of the norm, but in this administration and in this environment can be done if done properly. And there's no reason that an inmate should suffer and potentially lose, the ability to use their arms just because they have a warden that is too lazy to do anything or is just pissed off at every white collar offender in that camp. So that's, it's just something that consultants see routinely, are problems that really can't be anticipated, but can be addressed. Doesn't always work out that way, but can be addressed and remedied properly in many occasions. The other thing Craig and I talked about that is kind of sensitive to me is really what should people expect from us? What does a consultant do? When do you bring a consultant into the picture? I was in Turkey last week with a law firm. They have a client that just received a target letter. And this is a very well-to-do Turkish businessman. And they are really nervous because if it gets any further, they know he's going to the Brooklyn MDC, at which point I'm going to call Craig. And there's fear. There's fear at every level. And this person's a billionaire who is beyond petrified. So I always tell people, the same way you want to bring your attorney in as quickly as possible, if you have the wherewithal, bring in a consultant, because hopefully you don't need us. Hopefully, you have a sentence that is home confinement or nominal, or things turn out well. Like in Dr. Rafai's case, I worked with him, for quite some time, and he won his case at trial. While it doesn't happen often, so, you always hope for the best. But my recommendation is, if you have the ability, or even just want to talk to somebody, you should reach out to a consultant as soon as you learn about us. Working with some attorneys, they would rather have us talk to their clients than them, because there's a lot of questions that only we can answer. Attorneys have never been to prison, and that's a good thing, but they don't understand, nor should they know, a lot of the issues that will be facing these clients after sentencing. So when do you bring a consultant in? As quickly as you can. Don't bring us in when your client's driving to surrender, because there's just nothing we can do. But talk to consultants. Just don't talk to me, or talk to everybody, because you have to feel comfortable with whoever you're working with. Because in some instances, you could be working with that person for years. I've been working with one client for 5 years now. He was my first client when I got out of prison, and he still hasn't had his pre-sentence report. So talk to people. You need to feel comfortable. Your family needs to feel comfortable, because if you are sentenced to time, that relationship could last many, many years. And having a comfortable client certainly makes it not only for a better relationship, but a more open relationship. Because like Craig said, I have to imagine 100% of my clients do not tell me 100% of the truth. And I don't know that I would have in their situation either. But sometimes their wife tells you a little bit, sometimes their child, sometimes the attorney does, and eventually you get to piecemeal it all together. And I think having that relationship with everybody on the team is invaluable. There shouldn't be any sense of, especially between us and attorneys, there shouldn't be any sense of domain, that we're trying to step on anybody's toes. We're not lawyers. We don't practice law. We'll never tell a client what to do legally. That's not our place. But I think that being able to bring a global perspective to things, and a different perspective to things, is invaluable in truly what is a time of need.
Sam,
Okay.
Sam, Craig, why don't you take a couple more minutes, then we'll open it up to Q&A, okay? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I was just going to say something he said. In a day and age, look, I can tell you. I mean, this is not so much about what I do or what Sam does. I think this is just more of a public service announcement to everybody. I can tell you that every single email I send, every single text message I send, and every single conversation I have, I assume is being recorded and will be in front of a judge one day. That's it. I don't operate under any other assumption. And I got a call from someone who wanted me to try to help, and they said, "Can you guarantee it?" And I wrote back like my standard line: "If you want to guarantee, I'm not the right guy to hire. Go find somebody else." For obvious reasons, there's nothing you can guarantee, particularly in the prison system. And I think that that's something that's very, very is just extremely important. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention, when it just comes to what we do in general, mental health just happens to be something very personal and significant to me. And it's what I wrote most part of my thesis on when I got my master's. And it's very, very important to me. And so I take a lot of cases where there's a very serious mental health component on it. And Al is on this, and we work together on these sorts of things. And the advocacy that you have to do for people that have autism, for people that are bipolar, for people that have other sorts of mental or physical disabilities, is enormous. It's extenuating. And so those are circumstances or situations where people could really benefit by having somebody, because everyone's just a name and a number, and then you put someone in there with real disabilities. um it could be a disaster. It could be a true horror. And so I think, and Jeff, we can open the question. I think the thing that matters to me is, yeah, there are people who just want to have a prison consultant because they want their questions answered and they want someone to hold their hand, and it's an insurance policy and stuff like that. But the reality is that I know I can speak for myself that my clients have real issues, like real issues. And certainly when I get hired by someone who's in prison, it's because there's a problem. It's very different when you're hired before someone goes in versus when they're in. When you get a phone call and they're in, 95% of the time, they've got a real problem. And so I just, I think that that's just something I wanted to mention, that this isn't just like glam and glory and famous people. 98% of my clients no one's ever heard of, and they have real problems and they have real issues, and their families have real problems, issues, and they're scared and they need help and they need people to advocate for them. And so I think that's why we care about what we do so much, and we view this as a sort of a team game in a lot of ways. Go ahead, Jeff.
Sam, Craig, thank you for that. We're gonna go to questions. If anyone has a question that they'd like to ask Sam and or Craig, please put your name in chat, and I will call on you. Drew, I think that you is Drew here? All right, let's go to Valerie. Valerie?
Hi, I hope you can hear me. Thank you so much for allowing me to ask a question. I have been released from Estelle Prison Camp incorrectly, and it's so funny that Craig hit on the exact things that I already had questions on, as well as Sam. First of all, every single person has a different story. But when paperwork gets screwed up, I was supposed to, on my DNC, I was supposed to be sent straight up to FLM, and my paperwork has been screwed up. And when he was also, and so I ended up at the halfway house. And now that I'm here, I don't have anybody to help me. So a consultant, yes, I would love to see how much it's going to cost and see if he can help. But Sam had mentioned Josh Smith, and I don't know if both of the consultants probably already know this. I don't know about everybody in the group, but there's absolutely no way to get anybody to answer at any of the offices when you need help. I'm out. I can't reach anybody at the Central or Josh Smith or John Bartlett, all the people in the South. And then the other thing that I was just going to hit on real quick is I have a traumatic brain injury. They ripped me off my meds from day one, and then on top of it, denied me visits with my neurologist. And now my halfway house is trying to help me, but it's going to be another month to 2 months, because the only way they can get my medical visit to the neurologist approved is if either I pay for it out of my pocket, or B, they have to go through BOP.
So Valerie, what's your question?
One, how do we get a hold of, I mean, if I have to pay the consultant to do so for me, how do we get a hold of Josh Smith or somebody that can help us? Like, I can send information.
Okay. So Valerie, is your question, is it appropriate for a prison consultant to help in the kind of situations that you just mentioned? So let's just put it to Sam and to Craig.
So Valerie and I actually spoke right before this call, and I told her just to send me her information. I'd be more than happy to, look into it for her. That's not going to cost anything, Valerie. Send me the information tomorrow. I did texted you my email address, and you asked me about a different issue. We can touch base tomorrow, and I'll see if I can, point you in the right direction.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Sam.
Sam and I aren't here for money, and so you
Thank
know it,
you.
Valerie. If I can help, and Sam will call me and ask if we can help, and we'll take this offline for tomorrow. But yes, to Jeff's point, yes, these are things that people hire us for. This is not an uncommon problem for those in the know. They're aware of how short-staffed regional reentry centers are, how short-staffed the BOP is. They're aware that the Bureau of Prisons isn't funding them properly. There was a report that came out, I think, like a month ago that showed how far behind the BOP was in paying the halfway houses. And so this is a problem that sadly is not just germane to Valerie, and it exists, and those of us in this field know about it. I just want to mention one thing, Jeff, to go to the next question. Our good friend Mr. Simmels out there thought it might be worth just mentioning that a lot of what Sam and I are trying to do, and a lot of us want for these next 10 or 15 years, is to build foundational relationships across the jurisdictions. Like we are very much in the relationship building with the people we have to work with as much as we are with our clients, right? We do not view them as adversaries. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. I mentioned this earlier. You can't have a successful client relationship or have successful business venture or anything if you don't have the ability to interact and have foundational respectful relationships. And that's stuff that we're working very hard on. And in my case, it's not just in New York State. It's in states like Georgia and Florida and California, in Illinois and New Jersey and in Connecticut, because there's really no one who's doing this stuff in the states, and people in states need just as much help as people going to federal prison. So, I think it's important for people to understand that we are trying to do that, so that it helps everybody, not just a client, but all future clients.
Thank you, Craig. Next is Ronald and then Greg.
This is less of a question and more of a testimonial for Sam. Sam helped me through the process. I went to FCI Otisville. He showed me the ropes. He told me what to expect, and everything was true to his word. I was able to go through, get through the system, and I wound up working at the warehouse and kept myself busy. Just kept me out of trouble. And by meeting Sam, I was able to actually find out that someone was coming in who was a client of Craig at Otisville, Jerry. And I was able to grab Jerry the day he came in and give him guidance. Having been there for a few months, I was able to share my knowledge with him. So it's just the importance of information and connections, and a consultant really can help in more ways than you can imagine.
Thanks, Ron. I do know who you
Thanks,
are.
Ron.
I want to thank you. I'm in touch with Jerry. You better not be. He's doing okay.
No comment.
So I want to thank you actually as well. As soon as I saw your name, I'm like, wait, that's who helped Jerry. But Sam, go ahead. I have something I want to add before another question about that is perfect, Jeff. You're going to want me to say in a minute, but go ahead, Sam.
That just shows you the power of collaboration and communication. I was having breakfast with Craig in New York, and he said to me that do I know anybody at Otisville? He had a client going, and I said, wait, I have a client from New York that just went in a few months ago. Let's make the introduction. So there's nothing better than when somebody surrendering to prison has another face there waiting for them, that they have some clothes and some food and some toiletries and can really walk them around and help them get set up on the computer. And that comes with an open dialogue with everyone. And again, I think that type of relationship is invaluable.
Thank you, Sam.
And that's a good segue. Jeff, if I can segue off that for a minute, is that
Go
all
for
right?
it. Yeah, sure.
And what's important to know is that person that Ron helped with wasn't even someone who paid me. That person's I just want you to hear that person's wife is best friends with the daughter of my mother's best friend. And I just paid it forward. It's just the right thing to do, right? You do those things sometimes, right? And so, you know, I am just trying to help do something good for a family friend because of what I do and my experience. And it all came full circle. We've mentioned this a lot, but I want to mention it again. Marty Tankloff's now on this Zoom for, people who know him and don't know him. And Marty's become a really dear friend and colleague of mine. For those of you who don't know his story, you should learn it. He was wrongfully convicted, spent 17 years in state prison. He's now an attorney, got his license back like our good friend Jeff. And Marty and I talk all the time to just help clients. And having those sorts of relationships in our lives is very meaningful and it's very important and goes back to our whole theme of the night, which is the collaboration.
Thank you, Craig. Next is Greg.
Hey, Craig and Sam, thanks a lot for your presentation. I'm still a little unclear as to, like, how do you guys kind of ensure that you're not stepping on the lawyer's toes? And also, how do you, like, how's the service that you're providing? Like, how does a client know what they're going to get from a prison consultant that they're not already getting from a lawyer?
So I'll start.
You want to take it first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So
Go.
I'm very clear in any initial conversation to explain to clients, we are not attorneys. We do not practice law. We do not opine in any aspect, legal aspect of their case. I have clients sending me their plea and saying, what do you think? And it's not my job to give any legal advice whatsoever in any form or fashion. Not only that be, I think, inappropriate and borderline illegal, but it would, it'd be self-defeating. As far as what we do with a client, at least, everything I do is clearly spelled out in an initial scope of work that we send to clients. And I don't have a Chinese menu approach. In other words, I don't say to a client, we will sell you 5 character letters, 1 narrative, and a release plan. I don't believe in that. If you're going to hire us, then it's everything up to this point, everything, or after this point, or until you get home, or until I get the phone call from you saying, Sam, I never want to talk to you again in my life. Best call I can get from someone. So we have to spell it out because there's no question. Clients' expectations really run the gamut. And like Craig said, when I get a call from somebody in prison already, that just really complicates matters. Right. and becomes very, very difficult to manage. And most of those, at least for me, I would just rather handle pro bono.
So it's a great question. And I'll answer it a couple of ways. One is almost every criminal defense attorney I've ever met would tell you they don't know the first thing about what happens when someone goes in prison. The second thing is they can't pass a client off fast enough so that they can start getting to the next client. But I think the real answer is 75% of the clients that I've kept track of every client I've ever had, come from an attorney referral. So right from the get-go, the relationship's established. Okay, so think 75% of my clients came from an attorney, and the remaining, the overwhelming majority, 20% of the remaining 25% came from clients inside. So the divisions of responsibility are clear, right from the get-go. In state and federal are very different, as everybody knows. So I'll speak to state, which is, in a state case. I'm brought in often in, one of 4 places, right? When the client's about to take a plea, okay? So if the client's about to take a plea in state, no different than federal, right? A lot of the legal work's done. Now, the federal system is very different, right? In the sense that, if you're not inside, you go to sentencing, you don't know what you're going to get. In New York State, if you take a plea, it's a negotiated plea. Sentencing is the most anticlimactic thing that could ever happen. Right? 98.5% of all cases in New York State are negotiated pleas. So if I get called in and they say, look, I'm not offending anyone named Joe on this call. Joe's going to accept a plea for 2 to 6 years in New York State prison, and they want to hire you. That's it. It's done. When Joe goes in and says guilty, and the judge says, "I promise you 2 to 6 years," there's no sentencing memorandum. There's no hold your breath at sentencing. Joe shows up at sentencing. Judge bangs the gavel through the side door. So the point is that I'm now coming in post legal, right? I mean, there's still some legal stuff in sentencing and paperwork. My job then is transition. I view things in 3 phases. It's an arc: transition, advocacy while you're in, and reentry, right? And so, I hope that answers your question. I also could tell you that the clients who call me from inside, if I get hired when they're in, if it didn't come from another client, it came from a lawyer, usually their appellate attorney or their trial attorney, right? They call their trial attorney and they're like, "Oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" And they're like, "I don't know what to do. Call this person." So, that's it from sort of a state standpoint. And I mean, the last thing I'll say is, and I love teaching, and so much of what I've done is I teach continuing legal ed to the state bar associations in New York. So they know what to come to me with, and they know that I'm not trying to be a lawyer. I'm just trying to be, a consultant and an advocate and a mitigation specialist. So I hope that answers your question, Greg.
Yeah, that was really helpful how you laid it out into those 3 phases, because you're right. I've never heard from my lawyer after my case was done. And there's a lot that goes on after that. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
This call is no longer being transcribed.
Does anyone else have a question? Avi, do you have a question?
Yes, Jeff, thank you. And thank you, Sam. And thank you, Craig. It was a great presentation. When Craig, you mentioned something about autism and issues around sentencing and autism. I do a lot of advocacy work with mainly physicians. I myself was incarcerated. I'm now 3 years out. I was diagnosed with Asperger's, and I do the work pro bono. But as I don't have a lot of experience, as both you and Sam do, I would like to know what resources are available for people pre-sentencing or even after sentencing, and while they're inside, I can help or direct them, either to you or to other services if they are, in fact, dealing with a spectrum disorder type of diagnosis. And also for physicians specifically as well. I'm a physician, and I would like to know if there's anything you can do or I can direct them to you regarding those two areas. So thank you again. If you have anything that can help in that regard, thank you.
Thanks, Doc. Yeah, Sam, you want me to jump in first?
Go for it.
Yeah. So, Elizabeth Kelly's a dear friend of mine. Sam knows her. I saw the people that Liz Kelly is
This call is
probably the
being
most
transcribed.
preeminent attorney in the country when it comes to autism. And so, Avi, I don't know if you know Liz, but if you don't, I'm happy to connect you. Just from a resource standpoint, the two of you should know each other and speak. When I'm presented with these sorts of cases, before an individual goes in, I think there is a tremendous amount of work that can be done leading up to incarceration. And it's not so much services. I mean, this is something you could do as a doctor. They say knowledge is power. I've made this term up myself, pre-sentencing medical reports or pre-sentencing psychiatric reports. They're knowledge reports. They're reports that are going to the chief medical officer, say, of a Department of Corrections. They're going to, an associate commissioner of mental health. They're going to the classification and movement to say, look, here is who's coming to you, right? Here is everything you have here. Here is your walking liability. And it has medical records. I mean, it's not 700 pages, but it's appropriately done so that you have that information so that the minute the person gets into the system, right, you can advocate at the facility level, right? Wherever they are at the facility level. And then depending again, state or federal, regional offices, central offices, or whatever. And that's having certain doctor letters. I mean, there are key points that you can hit. And so, I know for myself, and I'll give it to Sam in a minute. I will tell you both state and federal. When I have people with mental health issues or medical issues, those before these people even show up at the facilities, they know about this person. They know what they've got a list of their medications, they've got pictures of their pill bottles, they've got doctor letters and stuff like that. And that, again, I view it as partnering with these people. I'm trying to help them avoid a problem, make it easier, and potentially get them to the right place. Then it's a lot of, death by 1,000 paper cuts when they're at a facility, and just, staying on top of them and getting them to do what they do. So I hope I answered your question, but that's a lot of proactive steps that, you can take or somebody can take to help someone before they go in. Go ahead, Sam.
Where we see people specifically with mental issues, we work very closely with a forensic psychologist. And a lot of that work goes into the pre-sentence report and the sentencing itself to try to help mitigate the outcome of sentencing. To date, really none of my clients have had a lack of mental capacity which would warrant a psychiatric type facility. Now, I do have some clients that need substantial medical assistance, and that might require them going to one of the medical centers, which, at best offers scant medical assistance. But if they are, level 4, care level 4, care level 3, then we certainly do our best to make sure that the BOP knows that this person is coming, and we get them to the right place to do the best we can to try to address those issues.
Thank you both. Does anyone else have a question tonight?
Thank you.
Anybody? Joel, you have a
I
question?
think Joe.
You're on mute, Joel.
Just one, thank you, Sam and Greg. They're fantastic. Very proud of both of them. They're doing fantastic work. Just to address the gentleman's last question, the delivery of mental health services in the Bureau of Prisons is minuscule. So I don't know if it was a state or federal question, but to be specific, if his son suffers from if he's on the autism spectrum, there's only 2 facilities that can address his concerns. It's Danbury, FCI Low, and Coleman, the medium security prison in Florida. If he wants any advice, I'd be more than happy to provide that. And one thing I want to say about Rothfeld is I'm very proud of him. He is a fantastic guy. Sam too, in fact. Both are fantastic. That's it.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Joel. Thank you for the endorsement of both
Thank
of
you,
our
Joel.
speakers. Anybody else have a question tonight? Sam, Craig, thank you so much for your generosity and your candor with all this. Nobody knows better than the people in our support group and who watch this how difficult this can be, and to do it in isolation and without help is terrifying and horrifying. So thank you both. You both want to come on, just tell people how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, and Jeff, I want to say something. Sam's going to be pissed off at me for doing this, but that's okay. And it's past the bedtime. But I say this all the time. Listen, anyone on this call, you can reach out to us. Okay, we're not, like if you've got questions or you've got loved ones or you have friends, we need to pick our brains or advice or guidance, like Joel just did for Dr. Friedman. Just call us. Okay, I don't mind admitting that I spend a lot of time of my day, and I know Sam does too, just answering questions for people and helping them because it's the right thing to do. So particularly for this group of people on this call, we're here as friends, okay? And we know how to manage our businesses, so don't hesitate to reach out to us. Do you, Jeff, to get us or find us, do you want me to put it in the chat or just say it out
No,
loud,
we're
or what do you
saying
want me to do?
because the chat won't appear on YouTube, so we need you to.
Okay. Well, I guess you can three easy ways to find me. Google my name. You can Google Sam's name. My phone number is 212. I'll do my phone number and email twice. 212-202-5556. You can also text that number. So it's 212-202-5556. And my email is simple. It's my first name, Craig, and then it's at my company name. So it's Craig at insideoutsideltd.com. Best two ways to get me.
And something I want to add to what Craig said about reaching out to us. As Jeff knows, you have about 20 of 24 hours covered to reaching out to Craig and I. Because while I start my day at about 5 in the morning and end it at 8, Craig usually doesn't start until 9 in the morning and he ends it at 2 in the morning. So you have 20 hours to reach out to both of us 7 days a week. The easiest way is just to Google me, SAMMANGEL. It has all my information. My number is 561-490-4544. But just it's easy to Google instead of email. Google me and got all my information there.
Sam, Craig, thank you so much, and thank
You're
you all
welcome,
for tuning in tonight. In again in May it is Tom Harden. In June it's PG Sittenfeld. And please join us on a Monday night. You can get more information about our support group at our website, prisonist.org. That's prisonist like feminist.org. Sam, Craig, thank you. Blessings to everyone, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Good night, guys.